Self-esteem can be a fragile thing. It's often shaped by the opinions of others, the challenges we face, and the inevitable setbacks of life. Yet the Stoics, ancient philosophers from over 2,000 years ago, believed that true self-esteem should never be dependent on external factors. Instead, they taught that inner strength and confidence come from cultivating certain key virtues and perspectives on life. In this video, we'll explore 9 Stoic principles that can help you build unshakable self-esteem, the kind that remains strong no matter what life throws at you. But first, let's take a moment to understand what Stoicism really is. At its core, Stoicism is a practical philosophy. Unlike many abstract schools of thought, Stoicism was designed to be lived. Founded in Athens by Zeno of Citium in the early 3rd century BCE, Stoicism teaches that the path to happiness and fulfillment is found by focusing on what we can control and letting go of what we cannot. The Stoics emphasized personal virtue, wisdom, and resilience in the face of adversity. They believed that the world operates according to a natural order, and that true peace comes from aligning ourselves with this order, accepting life as it is, and cultivating an inner strength that is not dependent on external events. Stoicism became one of the most influential philosophies in the Roman Empire, with notable figures like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius spreading its teachings. These thinkers believed that through the practice of Stoic principles, one could attain tranquility, mental clarity, and, most importantly, an unshakable sense of self-worth. Why does Stoicism have such lasting power? The answer lies in its practicality. Stoicism isn't about lofty ideals or distant philosophical debates. It's about how we live our daily lives, how we respond to the world around us, and how we treat ourselves and others. It provides a framework for dealing with hardship, managing emotions, and ultimately developing a sense of self that cannot be destroyed by the ups and downs of life. When we talk about self-esteem today, the concept is often linked to confidence, self-worth, and how much we value ourselves. But here's the problem. In modern society, self-esteem is often tied to external validation. It's based on success, social approval, appearance, or status. This leaves us vulnerable, because when these things are threatened, when we fail, when someone disapproves of us, or when life takes an unexpected turn, our self-esteem can crumble. The Stoics had a radically different approach. For them, self-esteem wasn't something to be pursued through external means. It was an internal state that came from living in harmony with one's values, being guided by reason, and accepting life's challenges with equanimity. Stoic self-esteem is indestructible because it is rooted in something that cannot be taken away: your own character and how you choose to respond to the world. In the next section, we'll dive into the 9 Stoic keys that will help you build this kind of self-esteem, the kind that remains strong even in the face of failure, criticism, or uncertainty. Know what you can control. The first key to unbreakable self-esteem in Stoicism is understanding the distinction between what is within your control and what is not. This principle, famously articulated by Epictetus, forms the foundation of Stoic thought. The Stoics believe that we only have direct control over our thoughts, actions, and attitudes. Everything else, other people's opinions, outcomes, events, is outside our control. For most of us, this is easier said than done. We often tie our sense of self-worth to things we have no real control over. We seek validation from others, we worry about how our efforts will be received, or we stress over things that may never even happen. But when our self-esteem is dependent on these external factors, it becomes fragile. We give away our power by allowing the uncontrollable to dictate our worth. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control: our own behavior, our decisions, our mindset. When we do this, we reclaim our personal power. By anchoring your self-esteem in your own actions, you create a sense of worth that cannot be diminished by external circumstances. You stop worrying about outcomes that are beyond your influence, and instead find strength in knowing that you are doing your best, regardless of the results. This simple but profound shift in focus is one of the most powerful ways to build self-esteem that can withstand life's ups and downs. The next time you feel your confidence shaken by something outside of your control, remember Epictetus's words: "Some things are up to us and some things are not." Ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, let it go and focus on what you can influence, your own thoughts and actions. Practice virtue. The second key to Stoic self-esteem is the practice of virtue. To the Stoics, virtue wasn't a vague or moralistic term. It was a way of living in accordance with nature and reason. The four cardinal virtues in Stoicism are wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Living by these virtues forms the basis of a good and meaningful life. But how does this relate to self-esteem? According to the Stoics, self-worth comes from knowing that you are living virtuously. When you act with integrity, courage, and wisdom, you can take pride in your character, no matter what others may think. Your sense of worth is grounded in your adherence to these higher principles, rather than fleeting external markers of success. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and one of the most famous Stoics, often reflected on the importance of virtue in his personal writings. In his meditations, he reminded himself that true worth lies in how one lives, not in what one achieves in the eyes of others. He wrote, "The only wealth which you will keep forever is the wealth you have given away." This highlights a key Stoic insight. A virtuous life is its own reward. When your self-esteem is rooted in virtue, it becomes unshakable, because it's not dependent on anything outside of your own control. You can start applying this today by asking yourself, am I living in alignment with my values? Am I acting with integrity? If the answer is yes, then you have every reason to feel good about yourself, regardless of external circumstances. Virtue, in the Stoic sense, is the key to true self-esteem because it gives you something solid and enduring to base your self-worth on. Embrace discomfort and adversity. The third key to unshakable self-esteem is learning to embrace discomfort and adversity. One of the central tenets of Stoicism is the idea that challenges and hardships are not to be feared, but rather seen as opportunities for growth. The Stoics understood that life would inevitably bring pain, difficulty, and suffering, but they believed that our response to these challenges defined our character. Epictetus once said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." The Stoics believed that adversity is a test of your inner strength. Every time you encounter hardship, you have the chance to develop resilience and fortitude. Instead of shrinking from discomfort, the Stoic mindset encourages you to face it head-on and view it as a way to strengthen your sense of self. But what does this have to do with self-esteem? Modern ideas of self-worth often emphasize comfort and ease. We're taught that if things are difficult or if we're struggling, we must be doing something wrong. This creates a fragile sense of self-esteem, where our confidence is only intact when life is going smoothly. The Stoics offer a different perspective. They believe that true self-worth is not about avoiding discomfort, but thriving despite it. When you learn to embrace challenges, you build a sense of self-esteem that is rooted in resilience. You stop fearing failure, rejection, or setbacks because you understand that these experiences are necessary for your growth. The more you push through adversity, the more confident you become in your ability to handle anything that comes your way. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that difficulties were part of nature's plan. In his meditations, he wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This Stoic mindset teaches that instead of avoiding challenges, we should see them as the very thing that helps us move forward. When you start viewing discomfort as a natural part of life, you'll notice that your self-esteem becomes more durable. No longer dependent on things going perfectly, it becomes grounded in the knowledge that you can handle whatever life throws at you. Embrace adversity, and you'll discover an inner strength that forms the core of unbreakable self-esteem. Detach from external validation. The fourth key to unbreakable self-esteem is learning to detach from external validation. In today's world, where social media and constant feedback from others play such a large role, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking approval from those around us. Whether it's likes on Instagram, praise from colleagues, or compliments from friends, many people base their sense of self-worth on the opinions of others. The Stoics warned against this. For them, placing your self-esteem in the hands of others was a dangerous path because it meant you were no longer in control of your own happiness. Marcus Aurelius cautioned, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own. This doesn't mean the Stoics were indifferent to others' perspectives. They valued constructive feedback, but they did not allow their self-worth to rise and fall based on external validation. Stoicism teaches that your worth comes from within. It's based on your own understanding of your values, actions, and virtues, not on the fluctuating opinions of others. Detaching from external validation is liberating because it means that your self-esteem is no longer dependent on the unpredictable judgments of the outside world. When you stop caring so much about what others think, you free yourself from a constant cycle of self-doubt. Instead of trying to fit into someone else's idea of success or worth, you start living in alignment with your own values. This doesn't happen overnight, of course. It takes practice. Start by noticing when you seek approval from others or when your mood is impacted by someone's opinion. Then, remind yourself of the Stoic principle. The only opinion that truly matters is your own, provided it is grounded in reason, integrity, and virtue. Over time, as you detach from external validation, you will notice a profound shift in how you view yourself. Your self-esteem will no longer be something that can be given or taken away by others, but will come from a deep sense of inner confidence. Practice gratitude for what you have. The fifth key to Stoic self-esteem is practicing gratitude for what you have. One of the central themes in Stoicism is the idea of focusing on the present and appreciating the things that are already within your reach. The Stoics taught that happiness and contentment come not from constantly seeking more, but from recognizing the abundance that is already in our lives. Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." This perspective teaches us that the desire for more, whether it's more success, more approval, or more material wealth, is what often leads to dissatisfaction and insecurity. The Stoics believed that by shifting our focus from what we lack to what we already have, we can cultivate a deeper sense of contentment and, in turn, strengthen our self-esteem. When you practice gratitude, you remind yourself that you are already enough. Instead of constantly chasing after external achievements or validation to prove your worth, you recognize the value of what you have in the present moment. This doesn't mean you stop striving for improvement or growth, but it shifts your mindset from one of lack to one of abundance. To practice this Stoic principle, take a moment each day to reflect on what you are grateful for. It could be the relationships you cherish, the opportunities you've been given, or even your own resilience in the face of challenges. Gratitude helps you build self-esteem by grounding you in the present and reminding you that you are already worthy, regardless of what you may or may not achieve in the future. By practicing gratitude regularly, you shift your focus away from the external markers of self-worth, things like success, status, or others' opinions, and towards the internal appreciation of what you already have. This creates a solid foundation for unbreakable self-esteem because it roots your confidence in the present rather than in some distant goal or future approval. Accept impermanence. The sixth key to building unshakable self-esteem is accepting the impermanence of life. The Stoics were deeply aware of the transient nature of all things. They believed that everything in life, from material possessions to relationships to life itself, is fleeting. By acknowledging this, the Stoics taught us to cultivate a sense of detachment and to avoid becoming overly attached to things that are beyond our control. This principle is closely tied to the idea of memento mori, a Latin phrase meaning, "remember you must die." Far from being morbid, this concept was a reminder to the Stoics that life is short, and we should not waste it chasing after things that will inevitably fade away. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on the fleeting nature of life in his writings. In Meditations, he urged himself to live fully in the present, knowing that nothing lasts forever. So how does this idea of impermanence contribute to self-esteem? When we accept that everything in life is temporary, we stop clinging to things that are beyond our control. We stop defining ourselves by material possessions, relationships, or achievements that will eventually disappear. Instead, we begin to value the one thing that is truly ours, our character, and how we choose to live each moment. By accepting impermanence, you free yourself from the constant pressure to accumulate more or to hold on to things that are outside of your control. You begin to understand that your worth is not tied to anything external, but is rooted in how you navigate the changing circumstances of life with grace and resilience. This perspective fosters a sense of self-esteem that cannot be shaken by the inevitable changes and losses that life brings. Master the art of acceptance. The seventh key to indestructible self-esteem lies in mastering the art of acceptance. One of the most famous Stoic principles is the idea of amor fati, which translates to love of fate. It's a concept that pushes us not only to accept what happens to us, but to embrace it fully, even when circumstances are far from ideal. For many people, the idea of acceptance is equated with passivity or resignation. They assume that if they accept something, they are giving up or becoming complacent. But the Stoics had a much more nuanced understanding of acceptance. For them, accepting your circumstances didn't mean that you should stop striving for improvement or betterment. Rather, it meant recognizing the limits of your control and choosing to focus your energy on what you can change. Epictetus famously said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This principle is a direct challenge to the modern obsession with control. So often, people tie their self-esteem to outcomes that are entirely outside of their control. Things like other people's behavior, the success of their efforts, or even their own emotions. When those outcomes don't align with expectations, they feel powerless, and their self-worth crumbles. The Stoics teach us that real strength comes from accepting what is beyond our control. This includes not just external circumstances, but internal experiences as well, such as our thoughts and feelings. We may not be able to stop a negative emotion from arising, but we can choose how to respond to it. By accepting the things we cannot change and focusing instead on our responses, we reclaim a sense of agency. This gives us a stable foundation for self-esteem, because it reminds us that no matter what happens, we always retain control over our own actions. When you master the art of acceptance, you free yourself from the anxiety and frustration that come from trying to control the uncontrollable. You develop a calm confidence that whatever happens, you will face it with resilience and composure. This inner peace forms the backbone of unshakable self-esteem because it is not tied to external events, but to the strength you cultivate within yourself. Cultivate virtue as your true measure of success. The eighth key to indestructible self-esteem is cultivating virtue as your primary measure of success. In the Stoic worldview, virtue is the highest good, and everything else, wealth, status, pleasure, or external achievements, is secondary. Virtue for the Stoics consisted of four main qualities: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. These were the values by which they measured their actions and, ultimately, their sense of self-worth. In modern society, success is often defined by external markers: how much money you earn, how popular you are, how many followers you have, or how high you climb on the corporate ladder. These external benchmarks can create a fragile sense of self-esteem because they are subject to change. You might be successful today and lose everything tomorrow. If your self-worth is tied to these external measures, it will always be at the mercy of forces beyond your control. The Stoics believed that true success lies in living according to virtue, not in chasing after external rewards. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that the only true failure was a failure of character. In his Meditations, he wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." For the Stoics, living virtuously, making wise decisions, acting with courage, treating others fairly, and exercising self-discipline was the only reliable source of self-worth. When you start measuring your success by how virtuous you are, rather than by how much you achieve, you develop a sense of self-esteem that cannot be taken away from you. You may not always control outcomes, but you can always control how you act. This gives you a consistent standard by which to evaluate yourself, regardless of external circumstances. It's important to remember that Stoicism is not about perfection. Even the greatest Stoic philosophers, like Seneca and Epictetus, acknowledged their own imperfections. What matters is the commitment to striving for virtue. By making virtue your goal, you cultivate a deep and lasting sense of self-respect. You know that even in failure, as long as you have acted with integrity, you have nothing to be ashamed of. This mindset fosters a kind of self-esteem that is independent of success or failure. It is rooted in who you are, not what you achieve. Remember the bigger picture. The final key to unshakable self-esteem is remembering the bigger picture. Stoicism encourages us to step back and view our lives from a broader perspective. The Stoics believed that many of our personal problems, including low self-esteem, stem from an overly narrow focus on ourselves and our immediate concerns. By expanding our perspective and considering our place in the larger universe, we can gain a sense of clarity and peace. Marcus Aurelius frequently reflected on the vastness of the cosmos and the fleeting nature of human life. He would remind himself that in the grand scheme of things, our individual concerns are just tiny blips in the infinite flow of time and space. Far from making him feel insignificant, this perspective helped him cultivate a sense of humility and acceptance. He understood that many of the things we worry about are not nearly as important as we make them out to be. This broader perspective can help you develop a more resilient self-esteem by taking the pressure off of your individual achievements and failures. When you recognize that your life is part of a much larger whole, you stop placing so much weight on every little mistake or shortcoming. You begin to see that your worth is not tied to specific outcomes or accomplishments, but to the fact that you are part of something much bigger. This idea is closely related to the Stoic concept of sympatheia, which refers to the interconnectedness of all things. The Stoics believe that we are all part of a larger community, not just of humans, but of the entire universe. This understanding fosters a sense of belonging and purpose that goes beyond individual success or failure. When you view your life through the lens of sympatheia, you realize that your worth is not just about what you achieve for yourself, but also about how you contribute to the greater good. By remembering the bigger picture, you develop a sense of self-esteem that is grounded in humility and connectedness. You stop defining yourself by narrow, individualistic standards and start seeing yourself as part of a larger whole. This perspective helps you maintain a sense of balance and perspective, even in difficult times, and it gives you a deeper sense of purpose that transcends personal achievements. As we've explored, the Stoic approach to self-esteem is radically different from the modern focus on external validation and personal achievement. The Stoics teach us that true self-worth comes not from what we have or what we accomplish, but from how we live. By focusing on what is within our control, embracing discomfort, detaching from external opinions, practicing gratitude, and living virtuously, we can develop a sense of self-esteem that is strong, resilient, and unshakable. This journey toward indestructible self-esteem is not easy. It requires daily practice and reflection. But the beauty of Stoicism is that it gives us practical tools for cultivating this inner strength. Whether it's accepting what we cannot change, measuring success by virtue, or remembering the bigger picture, the Stoics provide a roadmap for building a self-esteem that can withstand the ups and downs of life. In a world that often encourages us to base our self-worth on external achievements or fleeting opinions, the Stoic path offers a refreshing alternative. It reminds us that our true value lies not in what we have or what others think of us, but in how we choose to live each moment. By applying these Stoic principles to our daily lives, we can build an indestructible self-esteem that is rooted in wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. So, as you move forward on your journey, remember that the foundation of true self-esteem is already within you. It is not something that needs to be earned or given by others. It is something that you cultivate through your thoughts, actions, and values. The Stoic keys we've discussed are your tools for unlocking this inner strength. Use them well, and you will discover a self-esteem that is as unbreakable as the ancient Stoic wisdom itself.